Welkom julle. Dis nou jammer dat ons nou nie hierdie klas kon gehad het vandag nie. Ek het nog gelyk gesien om my week so af te sluit met my gunsteling groepie. Annika, Sumari, Christian. Yes, let's continue with the work as if it would have been a real-time session. And then obviously, as the announcement has indicated, you will then have to just go onto Moodle and onto the specific page on Moodle or folder that I've created on Moodle, which is real-time Zoom sessions. And there you will find all the sessions and we'll update it on a daily basis as we do our lectures. But let's revert to chapter 1. We've done our introduction already, so we know that what the assignment, and we've done our assignment brief out as well, so you know exactly what to expect, what the outcome would be for the activities for this particular module. But just to get the ball rolling and understand why we are doing consumer behavior, you will see that in chapter 1, if I quickly highlight all the outcomes there for you, that a lot of the work you have done in business marketing in your first year. So what we're trying to do now, and remember that you have enrolled or are enrolled on a course to qualify yourself with a marketing qualification. So the main objective of this module is for us as future marketers, or for you as future marketers, to try and understand what makes the consumer tick. Why do consumers make the decisions? What motivates consumers to make certain decisions? Because if we can do that, we can sort of not predict their behavior, but we're more prepared for the most likely behavior that the consumer would, in a particular situation, would follow. So yes, like with every module, we'll start with a definition of what consumer behavior is, but more importantly for us is also the role that consumer behavior plays in the marketing strategy. There are a starting point for us would be to look at the different roles, and there are 3 specific different roles that the consumer can play in any transaction, and explain the importance of consumer behavior. Why do we study consumer behavior? That's always, I think, that always leaves you the option, or this particular outcome leaves you the option for a nice essay question, because it requires you to apply specific principles that you've already been exposed to, and think about them, and conceptualize them. And I think that is why this specific learning outcome, the reasons for studying consumer behavior, will always be a nice, or could always be a nice topic for essay question in a paper or an exam. And then the nature of what's the nature of consumer behavior? We'll deal with that during this particular module. So let's get the ball rolling and see what consumer behavior focuses on. It focuses on how individuals or groups or organizations select, buy, use, and dispose of the goods and services. And then obviously we are interested in their experiences, if it satisfied the specific needs or the reason for their specific purchase. Right. Consumer behavior could be defined as a combination of activities as well as factors and influences that occur before, during, and after the purchase of the particular product or service itself. Now, the 3 different roles that consumers, types of consumers that we find. You can either be a consumer as an individual or households. That's mother, father, family. You buy the daily groceries for the entire household. You buy a product for yourself. because you're thirsty now and you quickly run into a shop and buy a cool drink, or we buy products or use services as a business. So the types of consumers that we will be looking at is the consumer as an individual, and then also the consumer as an organization or a business. What's the main difference between the two? The main difference between consumers and businesses is that both of them act on a specific need that needs to be satisfied, and that's why they buy a product or service. Both of them actually have problems that they experience that with buying a product or using a service would resolve that problem. But then also in the case of businesses, it's slightly more complex decision-making process that is followed. The process is pretty much the same, it's just a more extended, it happens over a much longer period because usually the financial implications, the risk of financial risk if you make the wrong decision or you buy the wrong product or you use the wrong service is so much greater than the individual who just bought a can of cool drink and then realized this is not really what I wanted. I actually wanted a Fanta, not a Coke. So the financial implications is so much greater. The amount of money that is spent on a transaction is so much greater in the case of a business. And as a result of that, obviously it takes much longer for a business to reach a decision before they purchase a product or products or use a service. Organizations have a number of reasons why they buy. They can buy products, raw materials, because they want to manufacture something else with it. For instance, a bakery don't have their own cornfield at the back and then harvest and use it, the wheat to bake the breads. They get it from a specific supplier, and then obviously the end product they sell to somebody else. But then, as I said, that's one of the specific reasons why an organization buy. Organizations then also buy to resell. And here specifically, if you can remember from marketing, business marketing, first year, I was specifically referring to the distribution channels, the retailers, wholesalers, and then also businesses to businesses. The another reason or third reason why organizations buy is because they want to conduct a specific operation. So therefore they buy the machinery or the equipment that they need to do their business. Those are the three main motivations or reasons why businesses buy a product or a service. Now let's look at the three different roles that can be fulfilled by a customer. A customer can be a user, a selector, or a payer. Now let's quickly look at what each of these roles mean. It basically means the following. It means that at the hand of an example, the following. Let's say, for instance, Christian, you sit in class, the bell goes, it's a break, you've been thirsty the whole morning, you go down to Munchies and you make a decision to purchase some fluid. Now that could be a bottled water, it could be a cool drink, it could be a fruit juice. And that's the only decision that you have to take, what is on offer, and you'll base your decision and act as a selector. In other words, select what you want to buy. You will also be the payer because you will pay for that drink before the lady at Munchies gives the cool drink to you. And then you will also be the user because you bought it for yourself. You didn't buy the cool drink for somebody else. So that's the three roles that right at the bottom it says the consumer can fulfill all three roles. And in this case that I've given now, Christian being thirsty, he was the selector, the payer, and the user. Let's look at another example. Another example might be where, for instance, or let's say, mum comes home from work. She's very tired. She's had a tough day, and she says to dad, "Listen, let's quickly get the family in the car and let's go through a drive-through and get some fast food because I mean I'm really too tired. I'm not going to cook tonight." Everybody, obviously, the children are very happy with that. So we get in the car, and on the way there, we have to decide jointly as a family of four where we're going to go. Are we going to go chicken? Are we going to go beef? Are we going to go Chinese? Are we going to go pizza? So once that decision has been taken and everybody in the car is happy, let's say, for instance, they end up with KFC. They're at the drive-through. Everybody has decided on what they want from the KFC menu, and they give that order, and he then obviously orders it and pays for it. And then when they receive the food, everybody eats and consumes the specific item that they have chosen. Now, in a case like that, for instance, the selectors were all people in the family because they jointly decided where to go and then individually what they want to each have from the menu. Secondly, the payer was dad. And then thirdly, um, the users were every single individual in the vehicle because they ate the food that they ordered. So in a case like that, mum would be a selector and she'll be a user. Dad would be a selector, a payer, and a user, and the children in the vehicle would be selectors and users. Another example could be where Sumari buys a cool drink for a friend. She was thirsty. She goes down to Munchie. She buys herself a cool drink, and then says, "While I'm here, I'm going to buy one for Annika as well." Annika didn't ask for it. Annika doesn't know she's going to get a cool drink. So in that case, um, Sumari would be a selector. She would be the payer, and she will be the user. And Annika would only be the user because she is actually receiving the cool drink, not having been involved in the selection process or the paying process. Right, I think you get the message as to how specifically these different roles are fulfilled by the consumer. Now, there are two activities that is of importance, and that's the mental and the physical activities, where the mental activities, as we see on that slide, refer to specifically the experience that the customer has or has previously had with the product or a particular product. So your mental activities take place when the customer assesses how this particular product that I'm going to or intend to buy, how's it going to satisfy my need? He bases that particular assessment on previous knowledge or knowledge on the product itself, and then obviously previous experience. And sometimes, if they are in doubt, they will also consult with friends and get other people's opinions. That's all mental activities. The physical activity is when you get in your vehicle, you take action, you go to the shop, you speak to the salespeople there, you compare the information that you have searched on the internet with the brochures that they have in the shop and the conversation you've had with the salesperson. So that's quite clear how the mental and the physical activities are different. This would usually have been a point where I asked the students for questions or if they've had any questions. And it is quite weird to have a recorded session like this where, especially with an interactive group like you, nobody responds and nobody asks any questions. And in this case, what I'm going to also do then obviously is encourage you to, or at this point, encourage you to, once you've seen this video and you've gone through the slides, to then send me email with specific questions or write down those questions. And when we then have our next session on Monday, then let me see, I think it's Monday. It's the Monday um, Monday will be the fourth period. So Monday, the fourth period, we start off with questions on the work that obviously you did not have an opportunity um, to list your questions to me or direct your questions to me. Right. When the consumer makes a decision, it's mainly driven by the needs and the wants and the desires of that individual. That is what motivates them to make a decision. Nobody's going to buy something if they don't need it at this point. I mean, if you're not thirsty now, you're not going to buy a cool drink. If there's a glass of water standing in front of you and you're thirsty, you'll drink it. But at some point, I think often only once there's a specific desire or motivation to buy something, it sort of actions the consumer to start the decision-making process. Now, there are factors, and we'll be looking at some of them in this chapter, or briefly touch on it in this chapter. And then later on in some of the other chapters, we will, in greater detail, spend time on some of the factors that are of greater importance and then have a greater influence on the decision-making process of the consumer. Mainly the factors that influence the consumer when they make decisions or influences their decision making could be the internal factors, and that is you, the person, your personality, your attitude, your perception about a product, your motivation because you're the one with the need. Your particular lifestyle depends on or influences what you are going to buy or not. Those are things that, to a certain extent, you as the individual consumer have some control over. And then obviously the people that influence it as well, the external group or external factors or group factors, could be the culture that you belong to, your social class you find yourself in, you obviously the reference groups whose opinions you value, and then obviously your family, which is probably the greatest and the single most important influence on decisions that consumers take. Let's look at the individual factors: motivation, perception, your learning ability, your attitude, your personality, and your lifestyle. Right. Motivation is, we could probably take it, bring Maslow's hierarchy of needs in here. The motivation for an individual to make a decision to buy something or not could be any of the needs levels in Maslow's hierarchy, but on sort of a daily continuous basis, it's our physiological needs, which are the ones that obviously we have to address and fulfill and resolve to ensure that we survive. I'm glancing on my watch the whole time because, as I said, the PowerPoints run on a different timer as Zoom, but we've got more than enough time to actually cover that, what I wanted to cover today. But I'm not going to extend the session to go through the work. I'd much rather allow us opportunity, because we have the time to catch up on areas that we are struggling with or need clarity on. We also have a different perception on things. That's very often the perception that we have, and there's a whole chapter on perception later on. And it's quite interesting, is based on our frame of reference. The opinion that we form on a particular brand or product is very often based on our frame of reference, or is most likely always based on our frame of reference. What you don't know about the product, actually, you don't know, and as a result of that, it wouldn't impact on your decision to buy a specific product or not. Quite often, however, the influence here comes from external sources, where respected groups, opinion leaders, family members, reference group members influence our frame of reference. Our learning ability, very often customers buy a product because it satisfies the need, and especially when it's not a very expensive, but it's a sort of a consumer product that you buy on a daily basis, like bread and milk. You don't really need to know too much about the product. Once you are ever going to, and you're going to probably just, in cases like that, use your experience or previous experience to influence your decision. But once the product or service that you want to buy becomes slightly more expensive, like buying a computer or buying a vehicle, um, the ability for you to search and obtain knowledge on that product before you buy it becomes very important, and also hugely impacts on the decision that you are going to take. Your attitude towards something, maybe based on previous experience or somebody else's opinion, um, can also be either favorable or unfavorable, and very often that influences the way in which we make our decisions. For sure, our personality and lifestyle, however, makes or impacts on our decision making. Most of us would like to maintain the lifestyle we have, and as a result of that, we buy the products and services that we need to maintain that lifestyle. So, your psychological characteristics and our way of life, um, in the study of your psychological characteristics, psychographics specifically, um, that include your personality as well, is a extremely important influencing factor on the consumer's behavior. Now, the group factors, family culture, social class, reference groups, opinion leaders, um, all of them have a very, very important influence as well. In some cases more than others. I think, excuse me, my apologies. Our family, as I said, is probably the single most important influencer on the decisions that consumers take. Um, Sometimes because of the if it's just you as an individual, it's not a family, but your family members, like your brothers and sisters and parents, can influence the decision that you take as an individual. If you have your own family, the decisions that you take is going to be influenced by the members of your family, your children, your son, your daughter, and your husband or wife. Culture is also very important. Culture, is, we can almost say, is the sort of personality of a society, and the impact it has on your decision making is because um, there is a specific acceptable behavior in certain situations that is determined by our culture. What is acceptable and what is not acceptable. You're not going to go to a graduation or black tie function barefoot. That's not. It's not okay, but it's actually frowned upon in a particular culture. But then, for instance, if you are in the East, a lot of the customs um, that form part of a culture require you to actually take off your shoes before you enter somebody's house. In that case, it would be acceptable behavior. So your different cultures do impact on how decisions are made by a customer. Social class, upper class, obviously you will have more money to spend. Lower class, you are just barely surviving on the daily basis, and that will definitely impact on what you have available to spend. And in many cases, um, the influence that your social class has on your decision making process is based on you wanting to maintain that status that you have if you are upper middle class or upper class, or then for you to maybe jump from a lower class to a middle class or move from one social class to the other. And as a result of that, and the influence that has on you as a consumer, you buy a specific product, a watch or a car, because it will give you that particular status, either enhance your status or it would improve your status. Reference groups, I'm not exactly sure which chapter this is, but we extensively spent an entire chapter on reference groups and the importance of reference groups on the decision making of customers and consumers. And they are different. There are about 16 different reference groups that we will deal with. I think it's in chapter 5, so around about page 100, 203, I think. And the reference group, or the impact that the reference group, or the influence a reference group has on the consumer, individual consumer, is enormous. Sometimes, and if I can use one example, you are all part of a particular course, and as a result, you are together on a daily basis as the Diploma in Business Marketing student group on campus at Prestige Academy, and you see each other, and as a result of being in each other's presence on a daily basis, you have grown to a very you've grown to become, or you're basically form a reference group just by that association, and you value each other's inputs, and you often ask other students in this on the same course as you, in the same class as you, for their opinion on certain aspects. It doesn't mean that you have to take that advice, but yes, reference groups play a very important role in our decision making as individual consumers. And then obviously there are people within a particular reference group that has a specific almost sort of leader role that they fulfill, and very often that particular or the members in that reference group, individual members, look up to that person and obviously value their opinion, and obviously sometimes copy the decisions that that particular opinion leader in a group takes. So obviously, yes, it influences from an external side, or from an external point, also the decision making of the consumer. As I said earlier on, this is a very nice question that at some point could result in an essay, because it is important for you as a second year student in business marketing to understand why it is important for us to study the behavior of consumers. One of the main reasons why we do that from a business point of view is that, and we've done that in marketing as well, you know that finding a new customer is going to cost you 5 times more than actually keeping the current customer happy. So the cost of organizing and recruiting new consumers is so much greater, and therefore we would much rather study the behavior of the ones that the customers that we do have, because if we can retain them by keeping them happy and satisfy their needs and producing products that will satisfy the needs and solve their problems, they will stay with us as a brand. They will buy our company's products, and eventually they will become loyal customers. And that's what every marketer at any business is after, to ensure that you convert your customers from potential customers in a specific market segment to a loyal customer. The marketers also need to create a long-term relationship with your customers. And if you can indicate to the customer, if you can get to the point where you add value to the customer, then also they will have an extended long-term relationship with your brand, product, or business. The things that you have to keep in mind here is, number one, you will always attempt to satisfy the customer's need. You will also always be focusing on the marketing concept as well. In other words, what are the needs of the customers, and then work back towards producing products and that will satisfy that particular need. And then in the same process also keep in mind that that consumer and you as a business, all not in isolation, operate and live in the same community or society. And as a result of that, decisions that you take impact not just on the individual, but also should consider um, the needs of society. Right at the bottom left-hand page on your slide, it summarizes the importance of understanding the consumer behavior. A business becomes successful if they build relationships between the brand and the consumer, and that lasts for a lifetime. In other words, I can't think of a better example than my wife, who has owned every single golf since the first one that came out, I think, well, in her lifetime anyway. Her first vehicle was one of the city golfs, and it became um, a Golf 1 and a Golf 2 and a Golf 3, and I think wherever they ended up. She doesn't have a Golf at the moment, but the fact is, she stayed with that brand because she was used to that brand. She was loyal to the brand because she enjoyed what the products of that particular brand offered her. So in that case, based on her experience with the first vehicle, and maybe as a result of that particular brand being her first vehicle, people tend to go back to that same brand. Having said that, though, it's also been proven in the research that only 50% of customers who buy a particular brand vehicle will buy the same brand or from the same brand the next time they buy a vehicle. Interesting. Right. The marketing orientations, you will be familiar with the four that we will pop up on the screen right there. And that comes from business marketing in the first year. And the reason why it's important for us to also look at how the marketing orientations or the philosophies of management towards customers will influence the decisions of a consumer is because um, this particular or these particular marketing orientations um, have a direct impact on you as a consumer. The production orientation, we all know, refers to businesses that focus not necessarily on, or not at all, on what the customer's needs are. They look at what their capabilities are and capacities are, and then they produce accordingly, and then they get the salespeople in to say, right, now sell it. I can think of two examples. I think it's very often called the field of dreams approach as well, referring to that movie by Kevin Costner, where in a dream he was told to build a baseball field in the middle of the cornfields on his farm. And he says, well, who's going to come and watch baseball here? And basically, the field of dreams approach then was that, or why it's called the field of dreams approach, was that the dream said to him, well, if you build a field, people will come. And Henry Ford was exactly the same when he made the first motorized vehicle by saying you can have any color as long as it's black. So in other words, the abilities and the capacity of the business itself is the important aspect when there's a production orientation um, approach in a business. Sales orientation, a more sort of aggressive approach that's taken by businesses. It's very often where they have a lot of stock that they want to get rid of, and they obviously sell very aggressively to get rid of that stock, maybe because there's a new improved version that is going to be launched. Your marketing orientation, also called the customer orientation, is the one that's nowadays become very popular, and purely because it is sort of customer centered. Basically, businesses go out and assess what customers want. They do it through surveys, they do it through research, and then they produce a product that the customers have indicated they would support if it is available. And as a result of that, um, the customer's opinion is valued, and it is a very more acceptable approach or orientation. Societal orientation is, yes, bottom line for the business is to remain in business. We need to sell to the maximum so we can actually not just survive but also make a profit. But we also have to consider the society and the environment in which we operate. That refers specifically to the most recent, um, or it is in the news almost on a daily basis nowadays, that companies express specifically their awareness of the challenges that um, the environment or the impact of their business on an environment is, and they recognize that they spend a lot of money in trying to support programs like recycling plastic and glass, and they also make sure that they produce more environment friendly products. Um, all these kind of things is just forms part of a societal orientation where, yes, the products is good, the products satisfy the needs of the customers, we listen to what the customers say, but we also understand the bigger picture, and that is that we have to take care of um, the planet that we live on. The marketing concept essentially lies within three principles, and that is that the consumer orientation, where all our marketing actions is aimed in satisfying the customer's needs, is important. We also do that to make a profit. That's number two, the profit orientation, because what's the purpose of being in business? Um, Otherwise, you're an NGO. And thirdly, the organizational integration, and that is to remember that the business itself is not does not consist of separate groups or units or departments, but that they all interact and that they all work together. For instance, let's say, for instance, let's look at Prestige Academy. Yes, we have a marketing department, and yes, we have a business faculty and an arts faculty and the IT faculty. But marketing does not happen in isolation, for instance. It is important that during an open day that the business lecturers, for instance, who teach the subjects, that they are involved in a day like that by speaking to the prospective students on what the courses would be about and what the careers in business would be about. And in other words, they are working together with the marketers in this regard, because they can clarify better to this prospective students what they can expect and what they can actually achieve once they have qualified and graduated. So it's important that that the organization integrates all the different components that it exists of in the form of different faculties, departments, or groups, that they work together as a whole towards achieving the joint objective of the company. In this case, with Prestige, obviously, to get more students. I think at this point, just for just want to wrap it up quickly. I think that it should be sufficient time for us to also just look at the following components, and just, yeah, I'm going to finish off by that, and then we could start next Monday with the roles. The application of knowledge of the consumer is very important. The marketing strategy, along with tactics that is implemented by a company, is all based specifically on the consumer's behavior, or it should be. If we understand how our customers behave, it reduces the chances of making wrong decisions. If we because the consumers are so overloaded with information on a daily basis. They sometimes get to a point where they do make rash decisions, or they don't make any decision because there are too many things to choose from. So it's very important that in your marketing strategy, that you keep in mind what is important for the customer, and that you do not overload the customer with too much information. If you ever understand that that is how the customer feels, you will make sure that your marketing strategy is actually changed accordingly, and that it does not um, happen that you overload the consumer with too much information. Social marketing. Marketers are not just there to sell, or selling as one aspect of marketing, more products for the company so they can make a greater profit, and everybody's happy and they achieve their goals. But they have a broader role, and they also have to consider the ethical, environmental, legal, and social context of their marketing activities. I think therefore companies are nowadays more involved also in promoting awareness for certain social issues. They do that through sponsorships and advertising campaigns, by donating certain percentages of the turnover towards a particular cause, by donating time. And I think probably one of the better examples I can think of at the moment is Hot in the News is and it's very evident on almost on a daily basis. You see the progress that is made with by somebody like our Springbok rugby captain Sia Kolisi, who's very much involved um, in trying to improve the quality of life of people who are underprivileged, especially and challenged just to survive during the COVID-19 pandemic that we're currently experiencing. So those are all aspects that him as a ambassador for a particular brand, as part of the social marketing that the business want to achieve, and in this case they are using a celebrity like the Springbok rugby captain. If we study how consumers behave, we also start understanding ourselves and our environment better. And I know that many companies, and the statistics are mind-boggling on how much they spend, how many millions they spend annually to try and influence societies to buy their products, and not others. And I'm talking about money spent in TV ads and sales themes and specific packaging of products. It's you'll fall off your chair if you know the actual numbers. But it is important for customers to be aware of the methods that's being used by the different companies on how they market their products, um, so that the customers are properly informed, and therefore they are not just lambs led to a slaughter, and they become unwitting victims, so to speak. Um, the customer must be better informed, and nowadays they are. I know that people are definitely, when they go to a shop to buy a pair of running shoes, or when they go to a dealership to buy a vehicle, that they have done proper research. Um, take the example of buying a house. You've been renting a place and now you want to buy a house, and rather pay money towards a bond than towards a landlord. And you start your process by going onto the internet and you start searching Property 24 and all these sites, specific estate agents that you probably know the names of, that you visit to see what they have in stock. And you find a good idea, because the search tools and the sites are so user friendly. You can actually decide online, out of all the different houses and all the different houses that's available in, let's say, the Western Cape, for instance. You can narrow it down to the area you want to stay in, the number of rooms, the number of bathrooms, the size of the house, number of garages, all these things. And then eventually that particular search, if done thoroughly, and most customers do nowadays, will only then approach an estate agent. So, right, you have the access, because you're representing the seller, to the house. I know everything about this house. Now I actually just want to walk through the doors and see if the experience and the information that I have obtained is actually the same. So that's um, nowadays the process that consumers follow. They do prepare very well before they make, especially expensive transactions like buying cars and computers and houses, for instance. It's been thoroughly enjoying the first week. I did miss your interaction during this recorded session, but unfortunately the circumstances of the classes that was cancelled for Thursday afternoon and Friday, because of the upgrading of our internet system on campus, forced us to do so, and we just bear with it. So it's quite fun, and I'm going to finish the session here and wish you a safe weekend. Stay indoors. I hope you've stocked up in that regard with everything that keeps you warm. It's going to be a stormy, cold, wet, windy weekend, but that allows you lots of opportunities to start with your assignment already. Stay safe. Enjoy the weekend. I'll see you guys for the fourth period on Monday. Thanks.